The two most vital, important things to be able to be joyful in the midst of striving is gratitude, and the other is margin and rest. That is the hardest thing for most people to work into their schedule, yet it is what hinges everything else. If you are exhausted, you are not going to be a good parent. If you are exhausted, you are not going to be an effective business communicator. If you are exhausted, you are going to be a less version of whoever you are called to be. And most of us are not good at prioritizing the non-negotiable part of what rest is.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. So excited for my guest today. I have Arwen Becker, who is one of my most favorite people in the world to talk with. And she has got such an interesting story. And I remember the very first time I met her that I knew when I met you, when Kimberly had introduced you to me.
Easter Sunday.
Easter Sunday.
Easter Sunday 2020.
Yes, you and Randy had found your dream house.
Yep.
And I remember Kimberly had reached out and said, okay, we've got a deal we need to put together today. I know it's Easter, but we got to do it. These are two of my favorite clients. I'm like, I'm on it. I'm on it.
You were.
And I remember talking with you and I instantly connected. It was like, I love this woman. Like, she's fiery, she's spicy, she's fun, smart. I'm going to I will go to the edge of the earth.
And you
people.
did.
Yes.
You did. There was no doubt about it. Actually, you know what? It's so funny because on April 17th, that was the day. So that would have been 5 days past when we first met. That was the day you were able to lock in that loan.
Yes.
Prior to them pulling it off before we'd actually got the pre-approval, I think is what it was.
Yes.
And Randy and I were he brought it up on April 17th this year. And we were talking about it over lunch. And I pulled up on my phone the notes where we had gone through how miraculous that whole experience of getting that house was.
Yes.
And it was literally to the date 6 years. It was April 17th. It was the day you called in a favor that ended up setting us on a place that we still we wake up every morning, I swear, Carice, and look out at the view of our house. And I am so grateful to God, to Kimberly, to you, to being able to bring it all together, because it was truly a miraculous time period to be able to get a house right in the middle of all the COVID shutdown, everything getting locked down, us sending all of our employees home. I mean, just all the unknown, and it came together. And I mean, it's a dream. It's a total dream. And you helped make it happen.
It was my pleasure. And it was fun to make that happen for you guys. And I love your house. Your house is stunning. And I remember, it was complex, but what's great, and this is what a lot of people, I think, get fearful about when they try to buy, is they think, well, I have a complex situation. I'm not going to be able to get financed. And that's not true.
And ours was complex. I mean, honestly, if I had my phone here, I could take you down all of the things that it should have stopped that from happening.
Yeah.
2 buyers fell through. It just so happened we were renting at the time, so we weren't contingent. That's the reason those had fallen through. The house had been on the market for 3 years up to that point. 3 years. It had gone through major price drops. Then they finally tried to rent it out. Then they had multiple offers that ended up falling through because of COVID. And then we came back after looking at it 2 years before and just feeling like it wasn't the house that we were supposed to have. We weren't in a position to have it. And we literally got that house basically on a belief that the receivables that we had coming in were going to actually hit. And they did. I mean, it was just like everything that needed to lined up so perfectly. And I mean, to anybody, honestly, who is in a position like we were, where I lost my dream home at the time, which was where my youngest son was born into. I mean, literally, we had our youngest son at our house in Newcastle. And, after owning a financial company, going through the Great Recession and, fighting to try and renegotiate, and, the loan probably 3 times, I think we went through it over three months each time. And every time they would come back and say, well, because you're business owners, we need to do all new financials. And it always just led to that point until finally I waved my white flag. I was just like, this house, I'm resenting the place that should be my peace. Yeah. And so we gave it up. And, and getting foreclosed on was the hardest thing up to that point in my life because it felt so personal as being a financial advisor that somehow you
Mhm.
can't hold your finances together. And I thought we were going to rent for like 18 months, 2 years or something like that, which turned into 9. We
Years.
literally kept, it was like 18
Yeah.
months and then we'd sign up for another 2 years. And I, at the beginning, I just so resented it because I was like, I don't want to be paying into somebody else's financial future. I want to pay into my own. I want to own the dirt. I want to be able to paint the wall and not worry that I'm going to have to pay somebody to get it repainted, all that kind of stuff. And I guess to just kind of wrap up the point as it relates to that is 9 years of paying rent. It took 6 months after we bought that home for appreciation to completely compensate us for what we had paid in rent over those prior 9 years. God
Yes.
totally restored us financially and then some. He's not just like I'm just going to do a little enough to get by, like good measure pressed down, shaken together and running over. I mean, it was just like
Yeah.
that house appreciated so fast and it was just like all the perfect pieces. And that is how our relationship with you started on Easter Sunday. The fact that
Easter
you
Sunday. I
were
remember
sitting
that.
in your kitchen, I assume, because we were all locked down at COVID
all
and
locked
talking to us
down.
as we were at our kitchen table with our 2
Yeah.
kids. One was at
Yep.
one had just taken another job and he was in Kansas, and so 2 younger kids having to do their Easter egg hunt, alone out in the front yard.
Yes.
And it was just like both of us just looked at each other. It was like, what do we have to lose?
Yeah.
I mean, we
Yeah.
felt like we were in a good position, but on paper, uh, it didn't exactly look like it was going to all come together. And then the buyers got all freaky about it because the other 2 had fallen through.
Mhm.
And it just was like, just everything it all perfectly. And you were kind enough to give us your time on Easter
Oh my
Sunday.
gosh.
And it just set forth this blessing that 6 years later, Randy and I still, I mean, literally, I was standing in my kitchen this morning looking out at the view going, thank you, God. I have the best
Mhm.
house. This is like,
Mhm.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And it
Mhm.
completely overwhelms all that was lost in those 9 years, to
Isn't
say.
it interesting
and the time
too? I
before.
mean, that's the thing. I always say, like, the house will pick you.
Yeah.
Like, you'll find the right house. But the thing I think that's always given me the greatest joy about doing this for a living is the people that I
Yeah.
get to meet. And I really I do it today because of the people. And I mean, fortunately, I've done this long enough now. I can kind of choose,
Yeah.
who I want to work
Sure,
with to a
sure.
great extent. And so it's like when you have amazing people like you and Randy, and you connect so well, and it's like there's so many loans that are really pretty easy to put together and it's fun when you get a complex one.
Yeah.
Like it challenged me, I remember.
Yeah.
And I thought, but I can do this.
Yeah.
I can put this together.
It
I
is.
know I have a great program
Yeah.
that this is going to fit. And that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
And that's where, a lot of consumers, just like with, financial advisors, which I want to get into in a minute too, is it's not a one size fits all.
Well, and you
right?
have really great relationships, and that's
Yeah.
because you have sown in and you have the time that
Yeah.
you have cultivated relationships where somebody like Kimberly that we've now worked with for, 25 years, that there's so much power in the collective.
Mhm.
It's not just one person and their skill level. It's what community do they have to support them in that, because all of us are playing a role. And so that's one of the greatest parts, is that you also have a team of people that are going to be able to fill in the gaps. And so that's why when
Yeah.
our kids were, looking at getting a house, and our daughter-in-law had worked at a mortgage company, I was like, but our people, you just have to work with our people. And I'm like, I need to not be that mother-in-law. So I'm not going to be that mother-in-law. But I'm like, if it doesn't happen to go the way that you're hoping, I have
Yeah.
some great resources for you.
Yeah.
And then of course, when the first conversation came and it was like, we don't think we can. I'm like, okay, now are you ready to have me put you in touch with Carice? And then, of course, the next response was, yeah, she thinks she can get it done. I was like, yeah.
And that's the fun part of it, honestly. It's like it can be a puzzle piece sometimes. You're like, wait, how do I put all these puzzle pieces
Yeah.
together and figure out, the best solution? Because there usually is some kind of a solution you can
Right.
put together for people.
Right.
But it's fun. It's like you can change people's lives and really change the trajectory. Like you said, all those years you rented, you made up for in 6 months.
6 months. Yeah.
And you guys could not have picked a better time to buy. I had you and I had some other clients that bought on Mercer Island at that same time. And both of you have hit it out of the park.
Well, it
with
was one of those
your
things like when
properties.
because we lost our
Yeah.
home because of the Great Recession, and so
Yeah.
of course I would look back and I would see like who were the lucky people who got to buy a home then, and I had
Yeah.
some friends who did, and their house now they're on the water on Lake Washington because
Yeah.
their house so appreciated because they basically bought it cash because somebody was for it being foreclosed on or whatever it was, and so I had to I can so vividly remember. Because I had to initially work myself out of this feeling of I lost something. Like I needed to really stop doing that because I knew God wasn't going to bless me with what he had in store if I was continuing to look at my current situation and curse it and just say it's not fair and I wish it was different and all these things. And that was where my son was born, and now that was we had the view of where we'd gotten married and all this, all those things that are easy to steal our joy. And I had to I was convicted that I needed to start celebrating the thing that I wanted, because I've had friends who have tried desperately to have children, and how terrible of an experience that is when you see everybody around you having children and it seems so easy.
Yeah.
And yet I listened to a pastor who said when we were struggling for years, I had to get intentional about actively celebrating the women in front of me, not just congratulations, like literally bringing them a gift, doing something, until finally it was almost 10 years later, she had her first child, and they had subsequent kids after that.
Yeah.
And so I learned that, and I was just like, I need to do the same thing for my future home, whatever that is. And so I remember the phone call from this girlfriend of mine who they had bought their house during the Great Recession, and they were selling it for just so much money, and then they were going and buying this waterfront property on Lake Washington. And I remember her calling me, and I was genuinely so happy for her, and I knew that I had finally passed through that gate, that I was like, I'm going to celebrate it because I know my blessing is on its way, however long it's going to take, I don't know. And I really feel that was such an important component of it, because I always did wonder, who are the lucky people who get to benefit from like a down market, whether it's like or getting in and buying Microsoft when it's new, or Starbucks when it's and you like we would sit down with those people, and it's like, I bought 10,000 shares of Starbucks and now it's worth like $1 million or whatever, and you're like, geez, what happened? It's like, well, it's just it was the timing, of course they were just fortunate and a little lucky to get in that time. And so I was always like, who are the people? So now I get to look at that housing map when it goes in 2020, and there's just that one little dip. And I'm like, that's ours. We were the people.
Yeah.
We finally got to have that little thing. And then watch the write up as everybody's like, oh, the world isn't going to implode. And we were able to keep all of our 14 employees employed.
Yeah.
And
Which is
and
amazing.
we had a record year that year, considering 80% of our leads came through the dinner seminars that I was giving, and those were gone for 18 months.
Yeah.
And so we just, it was just the whole thing. It's just all God. It's just crazy.
Well, what's crazy is you did two really important things. One, you always want to buy when everyone else is selling.
Yeah.
Like, go against the grain.
Yeah.
This is the thing, is like, people go in the herd. Like, they want to buy when everyone else is buying. And a lot of people were freaked out because of COVID.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully so, because nobody
knew. We didn't know if it was
knew.
going to be a 2008 financial shutdown or something.
But if you had the guts and you bought during that, it has paid off.
It has.
And then secondly, goes to something I've always believed, and I learned this from my dad. Like, if you live in gratitude, and my most favorite book in the entire world is this book called 29 Gifts. I will give you a copy if you don't already have a copy. I have read it at 3 different times in my life when I really, really needed it. But and I took the challenge multiple times, but it's something I live every day, and I now make my son do it. You have to give a gift to somebody every single day. Like, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be like a tangible present.
Like
it can be
or helping them with something, or
you call somebody that's your friend that's struggling with something, or you call, or you sit and listen. Maybe somebody just needed they needed you as a sounding board that day, or maybe your neighbor needed a ride to a doctor's appointment and they live alone. Something.
Right.
If you focus outward on other people, it always comes back
100%.
because you're in an energy field
Yeah.
that is, you're not thinking about you. It's not all on us. And I mean, heaven knows we've all been in those ruts where it's like,
Totally.
it's all about us. And if you can get yourself out of your own head,
Mm-hmm.
then you're putting out the good energy. And by
Mm-hmm.
giving to others, it always comes back.
Yeah.
It just always comes back.
Yeah. And it is a habit.
So,
I mean, that's the thing. I think it's very easy to get into a
yeah,
framework where we become overly critical and you
yes.
see the negativity. And it's just like anything else. You have to work at seeing the good.
Yes.
Like I was at, so in Kirkland, so I grew up in Kirkland, went to Juanita High School, and the
Mhm.
hangout in high school was what is now the current Starbucks on 124th. There's a
Mhm.
McDonald's, there's a Taco Time across the 116th, and then there's a Starbucks, but it used to be a Burger King.
Mhm.
And I was in the Starbucks, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, and I was writing my book, and I was done. I was like, well, I'm going to get some lunch. It was really beautiful outside. So I thought, I'm going to just stay parked here and I'm going to walk over to the Taco Time. And so it was like, I just want to feel the sun on my face, and the heat was finally coming through. I was like, oh, this is so nice. And then I got to the place where we always parked our cars in high school when we were hanging out there. And there are these two old, gnarly looking, blooming cherry trees. And I just happened to be walking through the parking lot at the time that it's probably the 2 week time frame that they bloom, that they're
Mhm.
just stunning. And then they're not so stunning. They're not ugly, but they're just not what they look like when they've got all those just perfect pink petals and everything.
Yeah.
And I just stood there with the sun on my face, and I looked at these two gnarly trees at this old Burger King parking lot, and I had such a moment of just thankfulness and gratitude and
Mhm.
reflecting on part of my history. And I mean, we're talking a walk that probably took me 10 minutes, but every bit of it, I was just like, feeling the sun on my face, and the cars are driving by, walking across the crosswalk. And it was just like this overwhelming sense of gratitude because I have so much in my life to be grateful for. But noticing those trees, how many times do people just drive in and out of that parking lot?
Yeah.
And those gnarly little trees that are all knobby and have been trimmed down so many times just don't get noticed. And
Yeah.
that day they were just like, they were doing everything they could to be as beautiful as humanly
Yeah.
possible. And I got this moment where I got to enjoy it. And it was just
Yeah.
like the littlest things.
Because you notice.
Yeah.
And a lot
Yeah.
of times that's what it is people just don't notice the little details. But I've seen it time and time again. Like
Mhm.
great things happen. I mean, good things happen to great people.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
I truly believe. And I think that if you're putting out good energy, good vibes, and you genuinely want the best for others and you try to give things to others, it always
Yeah.
comes back.
Totally.
It totally does.
Completely
Yeah.
agree.
I loved what you started to talk about with yours and Randy's financial business
Yeah.
because you guys grew one of the most successful, reputable financial practices
So good.
in this entire area. I mean, I was just blown away. I remember when I met you and I came to your office and I got to see a little bit about your company and then you told me about it. But I would love to have you kind of take me through what was that like? Like, how did you and Randy get started? And I remember like there was a very, very special interview that kind of
How it
knocked
all
through-
started.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was sure the only thing I would ever do with my life was work with animals. So I was sure from the time I was 5 years of age, that was the direction. I'm somebody who gets very committed and then stays very committed. And so that's what I was sure I was going to do with my whole life. And so I graduated from the University of Washington with a zoology degree. And at that time, before I graduated, I started working at a wildlife rehabilitation center up in Arlington. I actually lived in Kirkland, so it was a 42-mile drive. And I fell in love with it. I mean, I loved everything about it. And so I ended up doing a 6-month internship. And then eventually, when I was done with that, became one of only 2 paid employees that they had because it was a nonprofit.
Wow.
We had about 110 volunteers or so, taking care of 150 to 300 animals a day, depending on the season, because baby season, you always have this big, amount of babies coming in and things like that. So we'd sometimes have a lot. And so I poured everything. I mean, this was my everything. And at the time I was married to my high school sweetheart. We dated all throughout high school. And oddly enough, he's a financial advisor. It's
Oh,
kind of interesting that it went that way.
interesting.
But actually,
Okay.
it's not surprising because the one thing I was sure would make me happy is if I had money, that I would be happy.
Mhm.
And so I know that that was a foundational piece that I made the most important component while dating is I believed that he would be able to financially take care of me. He just had that kind of personality. I
Mhm.
knew he was a business. He came from an entrepreneur family, just kind of very business minded and things of that nature.
Mhm.
So he did that well. And so it allowed me to work in a job that didn't pay a ton. So I loved it. And then at the time, what would have been the worst day of my life was when I woke up one morning and I had a voicemail on our voicemail machine, answering machine. And it was one of the spouses of one of the board members of the Wildlife Center. And there were four of us who received a voicemail. It wasn't just me. And it basically said, I'm an attorney and just let you know you've been fired. And this is private property. If you step foot back on the property, we will call the police. So this was
Wow.
my dream job. And me and the other three people who were all fired were kind of the director. I was the assistant clinic director, and then our groundskeeper and our bird of prey specialist. And we had wanted to present something to the board as to how we could continue to grow this into the millennium because it was 25 years old. The woman who had started and owned it was in ailing health.
Yeah.
Had battled cancer and things of that nature. And so we thought it was something very generous. Like, we love this place. We want to show you how we would like to help it be sustained and continue. She took it the wrong way, and so had us all fired. And that was probably what I'd say my quarter life crisis began, because that was my entire um, identity was wrapped up in that. When that was removed, I now became a stay-at-home wife that didn't know what the heck she was doing with her
Mhm.
life, and realized even though I had money in the bank, bills were paid, we got to travel for the first time in my life. I got to, I could buy things. I was just deeply unhappy, and so that was the beginning and the end of my marriage. It only lasted for about 3 years. And so once that imploded, and I found myself 24 and on my own, having to figure out how I was supposed to pay the bills, um, my girlfriend was sitting in a coffee shop downtown Bellevue, and she happened to be getting up. Somebody else needed her table. They started talking. He said, "By the way, I've just launched this new company. Do you know of anybody who might be looking for a job?" So she connected the two of us. I hadn't even gone on any other job interviews. I was just starting with a temp agency, just like doing the initial assessments and things like that. Because I had no idea what skills I had. I mean, honestly, no clue. I thought the only thing I ever did was work with animals. Little did I know, I'll figure that how it helped later. But um, so I went on the job interview, and the guy was really nice. We got along really well. And I was just like, okay. So I accepted the position, and that guy I've been married to for 21 years.
That's
And that's
amazing.
how we started. So
So,
yeah, it started as a working relationship. The company was only about 4 months old at the time. And
wow.
we just had a very much yin and yang. I mean, just our personalities really, really work well together. He's a
Mhm.
visionary. He's, a guy that, just great at sales and sitting down with people and moving them forward to making good decisions and having fun while doing it, which was something that was kind of surprising to me because I figured the financial industry was going to be really boring, which a lot of it is, but not his company.
Yeah.
And about 6 months later, it was like, kind of falling in love with one another. And of course, that gets awkward. And there's other employees. And so I left for a while and did two things. I finally, for the first time, really dove into modeling. So I worked with Seattle Models Guild. I ended up being with them for about 7 or 8 years. And then, it was kind of always geared toward athletic modeling, things like that.
Yeah.
And then I worked in sales at a company that no longer exists called Equally Yoked Christian Singles. It was a Christian
Oh,
dating. So
interesting.
it was like a
Okay.
date, like Events and Adventure or
Yeah.
something like that, but for
Okay.
Christians, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so worked there in sales until the couple of employees that he had were no longer there. So at that point, then it was like, okay, now I'm going to come back into a totally new role. And then very shortly after that, we got married, and and the rest is kind of history. 3 kids, and they're amazing boys. And my
Yeah.
oldest is my adoptive son. That was Randy's from a prior marriage, but I adopted him. And it's just been it's been an amazing experience. I mean, I really thought working with animals was the only thing I did. What I didn't recognize at the time, just out of my youth and experience, was running the wildlife center. I was in charge of fundraising, so I put on
Mhm.
events. I was the one who had to manage all the people that were there and make sure that the animals that were under my care, because the buck stopped with me on many of those days, were all getting tended to.
Mhm.
So it's learning skills to be able to tell people, I need to do this really disgusting job. It has to get done, right? And
Yeah.
how to diplomatically make sure that people are getting their things done. Multitasking, just a lot of administration,
Mhm.
a lot of operations, and then dealing with media and just multiple components that I didn't recognize at the time. And then I also like math. I mean, I actually did math in college for fun.
Mhm.
It's kind of always weird to say, but I have that. It's like that brain that this plus this has to have an outcome that has to be the same every single time. And
Yeah.
so that's why being in finance really was great for me, because I was able to use these administrative skills that I had learned. I just didn't really appreciate them at the time.
Mhm.
And then just be in a place where I could grow those up with somebody else who was also kind of growing and figuring out, because he had just launched his own company. He'd worked for other people, and
Mhm.
his company was getting bought out, and he didn't want to stay on after it got bought out. So he decided to go out on his own. And so he was figuring the whole thing out too. So it was just
Yeah.
a lot of years of us kind of doing that, and then going straight into the dot bomb. That was interesting, is
Oh,
like,
totally.
remember, like, this crazy, where being in downtown Bellevue,
Yeah.
where we were in the first floor of I think a 20-story building, or maybe 19 stories or whatever. And it was like one day you'd come in, and the next day there'd be like 2 plates, like 2
Yes.
stories that were completely empty.
Yeah.
Because it's just like whatever that Techno company was just completely liquidated and gone. You're like, what is going on
Yeah.
here? And it was just crazy. So that was kind of like my foray into the financial business.
Mhm.
And so we were trial by fire and a lot of it, but yet it was just me and him, and we were happy to be married and get in our car and go to work together, and then work all
Yeah.
day together and go have lunch together, and just like everything. We always said we spent like 23.5 hours a day, and it worked for us.
Which
Not
is
for everybody,
unique.
but
It's
it worked
unique.
for us.
I
Yeah.
would think that would be difficult for a lot of
Oh,
couples, but
100%.
you guys did it great. And
100%.
you grew like
Yeah.
one of the most
Yeah.
successful retirement company, financial
Nearly killed
planning
me, but
companies that are out there. Well, and the thing that I thought
we got
was
to sell it. That was the important part.
well, that's the thing, is how
Yeah.
many of those companies can
Yeah.
actually have grown something to the point where they can resell
Yeah.
it,
Right.
which I want to talk about. The thing I thought that I always thought was really cool, you created a niche
Yeah. Yeah.
in that financial
Yeah.
planning about how, because I mean, I will say, just, being in finance
Mhm.
since I graduated from college is definitely male
Oh,
dominated.
100%. Yeah.
And I remember in my
85%.
classes, undergraduate as well as my MBA classes, I was like one of 4
Sure.
women in
Yeah.
finance. And a lot of men don't know how to speak to women
Yeah.
in finance.
Actually, a lot of women don't have to speak to
Well,
women. That's what I also
yes.
discovered, because
Well,
they've been
you
so used to
developed
being in a
this.
masculine-dominated industry.
Yes.
And so they have adapted a masculine style.
Mhm.
And I even had to unwork some of those components for me. So we didn't have that as that didn't even come on the scene until I nearly imploded everything. So 2016. So by that point, I was financial advisor. I had been meeting with clients. I thought that if I finally did that part, that it would all start to really connect, because we were, just the Great Recession created a massive financial hole,
Mhm.
and we paid back
Mhm.
everything that we ever owed,
Mhm.
but we were nearly $1 million in debt. And so that it's a lot easier to get $1 million in debt than it is to get out of $1 million in
Yes.
debt, right? And so that struggle over time, it wore me down to the point where I was really starting to have some very negative, very dark negative thoughts. And trying to explain that to Randy, I just
Mhm.
believe that he saw me as most people perceive me as, just she's so strong and capable, it can't be that bad.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
finally,
And
oh yeah,
just let's
yeah,
pause for a
yeah,
second. That's the part that is the hardest because you and I are like that way.
yeah,
Like on the outside, we can look like we're strong.
sure,
We've got it all together. We've tied it up with a nice little bow that looks great. But on the inside, we're dying.
yeah, yeah,
And nobody knows that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
nobody's got our
You're
backs.
right, right, right. It's
So,
very true.
yes,
Yeah, and it's
it's
hard to
true.
relate. It really is hard to
Yes.
relate.
Yeah.
And especially if you're married to somebody who's seen you be able to handle so much, it's like, I think you're probably pretty good. Or it's like, or it's just like I can't really hear what it is that you're saying, because that's so far out of my realm that
Yeah.
you might be having suicidal thoughts. I mean, really, it just couldn't he couldn't track
Mhm.
with it. And so I was just so depleted and so broken. I was just so broken from pushing and trying to dig out and dig out and dig out. And so finally 2016 I landed in the ER. I thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And so they, of course, wheeled me back, and they were pissed at me because I drove myself. And so all of a sudden, it's like everybody descends on you, because it's not, heart attack's not a
Yeah.
laughing matter, right? And
No.
so they do all
No.
these tests. And then hours later, she comes in with a little teeny plastic cup and hands this to me. And she says, "Take this." And I said, "What is it?" She goes, "It's my Lanta." That's all it was. It was debilitating stress. I was so
Mhm.
toasted. I was
Mhm.
just done.
Your body was like, "I'm done."
I couldn't do
Yeah.
it. And so that started me just basically waving my white flag and saying, "Randy, I can't do this anymore. I want to sell the company. I'm done." And so I ushered in this crazy time period. I can barely look back on it. And I'm like, what was that all about? Of finding a buyer who was somebody that we knew through our industry, and getting to the point where we had signed everything over. We had sublease documents. We had I'd already laid off half of our employees, and then I was going to go to work for this guy. He was a financial advisor and owned a company. He had a financial planning firm out of Redmond. And then Randy was going to go out on his own, and we were literally disbanding some of them. So one was coming with me, and others were going with him, and the other people were laid off. And I just remember Friday night, Randy comes home from this event that we should have been at together. And it was the first one I hadn't gone to. And he was broken. I mean, he couldn't imagine what his life was going to be like without the two of us working together. I mean, just was so broken by it. And
Mhm.
that next morning, Saturday morning, I woke up and I went for a run, because that's what I was doing a lot at that time. I didn't belong to a gym or anything. I just was running and doing body weight exercises at home. And I always kind of got, my just words, kind of direction from God as to what I was supposed to be doing. I never hear him, but it's just like you have that thought and you're like, "Oh, okay, I think that's okay. That makes sense. That's what I'm going to do when I get to the office or whatever." So I know that that's just the Holy Spirit talking through me. And so I went for a run that morning, and God said, "You do this, it will end your marriage." And by that
Mhm.
point, we'd been married for 13 years, 13, 14 years.
Mhm.
And I took that very seriously. And an hour later, we were back in our office with the buyer, and his wife was in town, and she was looking around at our office of all the things that, the decorations that she was going to take and what they were going to keep and what all this kind of stuff. And he pushed the last set of paperwork across for me to sign. And Randy picks it up, and he looks at both of us and he says, "So, are we good?" And Randy goes, "Well, I am, but you're going to have to ask her." So Randy was committed to doing it. And the moment he deferred that to me, I just bawled. I just bawled. I just said, "I can't do it. This is not right for my family. I
Yeah.
just can't. And thank God the man that we were sitting down with was a man of faith. He literally goes, think this is the best decision you guys could have made. That was his reaction. And he goes, and you can't even imagine what I found out this morning. Those sublease documents that were all signed by us and were supposed to be submitted, I gave them to my administrator or EA or whatever and said, can you handle these? And then they never submitted them. So they were still sitting there. So they actually hadn't been executed. And the whole thing just at that day just ended.
Mhm.
And so we left there. Randy, of course, is like, thank you, God. My wife didn't just completely rip this whole thing apart. But that next morning, Sunday morning, he wakes up and he's just bawling. And he's just like, you were willing to go to the worst possible place I can imagine, selling this company for just like pennies on the dollar to be relieved of the pressure. Do whatever you need to do to get this company where you think it should be. And so he gave me that permission.
Mhm.
And then Sunday night, before I had to go back to the company that I was sure I was leaving behind, Monday morning, it was like I was divorcing it. Monday morning, I wouldn't have gone there. And so now I was choosing to stay in the marriage. And so Sunday night, put my kids down, and I had my one and only panic attack. Just couldn't breathe. Randy was sitting outside. I was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm bawling. And he was just like sitting there wide-eyed. And so I did the only thing that I needed to do, laced up my running shoes, and I went out in the pitch black, the wet, the rain, and I was bawling. I was just like, God, please tell me, what am I supposed to do? Just like screaming and running and crying. And I was sure I would get an answer. And I always got direction as to what I was supposed to do. And God's like, I'm not your task list. I mean, he didn't say that to me. He just didn't answer. And I just kept asking, and I just kept asking, please tell me what I'm supposed to do. And I just got more angry and louder, and still didn't get, like, what am I supposed to answer? What am I supposed to tell my employees? How am I supposed to go back to all of this? And as I'm finally on my way home, I just heard very, very, again, just kind of deep in here, very faintly, he just said, I'm here. That's all he said. And was so deeply unsatisfying because that was not an answer to any of my questions. But that's all I heard, just 2 words, I'm here, I'm here. So I got home, I went to bed, and I woke up that next morning, and it was like, oh my gosh, I get it. At that moment in time, it was September 25th, 2016. It's etched on, I have a cross ring. It's etched, that date's etched on the bottom of this ring. I realized in my life, that was all that mattered. My faith, because I got saved at 25, a week after I met Randy, I accepted Christ. That was, besides that day, April 2nd, 2000, was the most important day in my life, because it was when I was reminded that it didn't matter what was going on in my life. It didn't matter how broken I felt. It didn't matter how far away from understanding all the components that I was going to be doing. God had not left me in the midst of it. But he also reminded me, I need you to trust me. And sometimes I'm not going to answer your questions because I will answer those when the time comes, when you are facing that. But right now, you just need to trust me for what's going on. I haven't left you. We'll get through this. And so the next day, Grace, this is the long-winded way to get to how I started working with women. That next day, I got an email to work with a coach who was a storytelling coach that I had known of at the time. And that was an email I answered. I joined that mastermind, and within 6 months, I had taken over all of the seminars, never been a public speaker, never generated a single lead for the first 13 years of our practice. And Randy had always done that job, 17 years he did that job. And I said, I want to take all of that on. I want a totally different role. I want to do the lead gen. I want to do the events, all that kind of stuff. And he said, if you want that job, go for it. Yours. You're totally welcome to have it. I don't know how you're doing it. Do you want my help? I'm like, I just feel like I need to craft this thing from scratch and figure out what it is that I'm doing. And so I just happened to meet another woman right after that. And that ushered me into giving women's events. My first time I got into that in 2017. And I found out I had a love for it. I found out that I was passionate about it. I found out that there was a massive need for it. And I was talking to all of these women who felt so left out of the financial conversation. And they were starting to craft what eventually became my book and my seminar, because I was determined to give them what was actually meeting their needs, not what the financial industry thought that women needed, which every time I saw it after that, I'm like, oh God, stop it. This is so boring. All you did was pink and shrink it. This just isn't what they're looking for. And it's very condescending. And that is not what they're looking for. They're looking for just to be communicated with differently in a way in which connects with them. And I was a perfect example, because when I started in the financial industry, I was also bored. Randy would start talking to some of that stuff. I'm like, oh, this is so boring. I don't want it. It doesn't make sense. Why does it have to be so complicated? All that kind of stuff. Can we just not talk about it? And that's where a lot of these women were. And so my thing that I discovered is that I could first connect with them and then educate them. But I first had to get them to believe that they could understand it. And that came from the heart first. And that was the part that has been so hard for other financial advisors to understand, because it's completely contrary to how most of the financial industry runs. I mean, people be like, you taught them nothing. And yet they would come up to me and go, this was so educational. I learned so much. And I'm like, you didn't learn anything. I didn't really teach you anything.
But they trusted you
Exactly.
because you saw them.
Right, exactly.
You met them where they were.
Exactly.
And that's
I
why.
gave them belief and hope that they could figure it out and that we would get there. But we didn't have to solve that right now. But you just had to first believe you can be in charge of your finances and make them work for you.
Yep.
But don't be quitting on yourself. And don't be doing burying your head in the sand and just saying, because I don't understand it, therefore it's going to go away, because ignorance does not pay the bills. And that's where I found that was the moment, Crease, where everything with our company. So Randy didn't have to do that job anymore. We found this whole new section of the Pacific Northwest to tap into that was hungry, that wasn't being over marketed to.
Yeah.
And just served it and served it and served it. And then, was doing radio and having it be more specific to women, and more marketing that was specific to women. And then really being able to understand why certain colors work and why certain things work and don't work. And, all of those components. And I just refined it because I loved it. I fell in love with it. And I was able to just really focus on that. And we found the right people to kind of replace me for the things that I did at the company that I no longer wanted to do and wasn't being called to do anymore. And it ushered in the growth in that last 7 years that is just supernatural. I mean, there's just no other way to look at it. It was like we hit it, and then finally it all just hockey sticked, probably right around 2019, 2020. And it just, the whole thing. And it's just like all these pieces. Randy never gave up. Man, there were certainly times where I was at that point. Obviously, I almost sold it. But he just always believed that the hockey stick would come. He just had maybe a little more tolerance for risk than I did, which is very common for men versus women typically. And we got there. And then in June of 22, we sold it for 20 times what I was going to sell it for in 2016.
I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember when I met you guys in 2020, it was on the upwards trajectory. And you guys talked me through exactly, because it was so different than any other financial firm I'd ever heard of. And I loved the niche that you had created. I was like, she's exactly right, completely right. And yes, it was incredible. So you sold your company and then you retired.
Well, so
sort of.
I have a hard time wearing. Randy still wants me to try and wear that. Randy's fully retired. Fully retired.
He has embraced it.
36 years in the financial industry. I say we ushered in financial retirement. That I can say. But I loved this last 2 years. So even before we sold the company, I was starting to train other advisors around the country on how to market to women. So doing the same thing that I was doing. So training them and mentoring them, and then writing my book. So my first book came out in 2020, and then I did kind of a rewrite of it. So She Handled It Retirement, and that one came out in 23. probably right before we sold. I can't exactly remember. It didn't come out with a bunch of fanfare. But so at that point, I really had that was part of why selling was the right time because I just I was kind of done. I
Mm.
personally was like, I don't want to be tethered to this thing anymore. I want to do keynote speaking. I
Mhm.
want to actually be a professional speaker that gets paid to go speak and inspire people and talks, on something that's interesting and write a book or write a couple books or whatever. And so that was partly what just made the timing right for it. And Randy's like, I don't want to run this company alone. That's not at all what I want to do. And it just really was the perfect time. The
Mhm.
market was up. We had a great buyer that we knew. Our culture, this is the thing I was just talking to somebody about today. Our culture was at the best, like the most pinnacle it had ever been in 23 years. We had the coolest people.
That's
Everybody got along
awesome.
well. It hummed. It was so fun to come into work. And that was the most heartbreaking part was selling it because what that did to the people, because there's only so much you can do.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
some people didn't want to go with the new company. And of course, new company runs things differently. And that was the heartbreaking part of it is to see
Mhm.
how that impacted them. And our son was one of those people, which was really
Oh,
hard.
because he worked at the company.
He worked for us. And
Oh.
I think in his mind, and I think a little bit in ours a long time ago, we thought, we'd keep it in the family business or whatever like that. He was too young. There was no way that he
Yeah.
would be able to afford a buyout or anything like that. And so
Right.
it just everything was right about the timing. But so at that time I was already starting to do keynote speaking and traveling and talking and and doing that stuff. I totally love. And so that's what I ended up doing for almost 2 years past, and then
Yeah.
officially December of 25, I officially retired from the financial business. So I don't mentor advisors anymore. I don't talk of
Okay.
the subject. I won't accept a keynote for it, because I just know that God's transitioning me into other things,
Yeah.
and I don't do well splitting my attention between things. I'm a hyper focus, and so I'm going to give 110% to something. And so I'm just kind of in this third season of life,
Yeah.
getting to have more time to do the things that I want, but not just in a self-serving way. Just
Mhm.
now I'm writing 2 books at once, and that takes a lot of time to sit and do research and think and and just things that you can't do when you have little kids at home or you're running a
No.
company or you're dealing with employee issues and all of those kind of things. And so it
Mhm.
really has just given me this new third season where I'm kind of reinventing myself in another new area. So it's
Right.
actually quite fun.
Well,
It's actually
and
very, very fun.
you come from an athletic
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
And
Whole life.
so that's sort of now part of this third
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you talk about that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
a lot of people ask why I got into the space of speaking out publicly for the protection of women in sports. And
Mhm. Mhm.
it's, well, when I first heard that there were men that were competing in with the women's category,
Yeah.
I, like many athletes like you, d- just instantly is like, that's not fair.
Is
That's
this a
not right.
thing?
Yeah.
Like,
Right. That's
really,
not,
this is
I
a
don't
thing?
understand.
Yeah.
So when it became really quite real for me, it
Mhm.
wasn't personal because I have 3 boys.
Mhm.
But I was very fascinated by watching a lot of these young women online and following their stories, and of course Riley Gaines being the most notable, but many of the other girls many who came before her that just didn't get the same notoriety. Um, but it wasn't until December of 23, my alma mater, where I played volleyball, University of Washington, became the first Division I school to offer a male player a women's scholarship.
Oh my
That's when
goodness.
I was like, this isn't okay. And so I had it just percolating for a while. I was, just like many people, afraid to speak publicly because none of my social media had ever been used for that.
Mhm.
My tagline on my Instagram said only an uplifting and encouraging content found here. And so I never wanted to go into any space that was perceived as negative or political, which just even to say that that's a political issue just boggles my mind, but whatever.
Agreed.
So I wasn't willing to go there. Yet it just it's like when the agitation just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally it gets to a point where you're just like, this isn't going to go away. I have to relieve the pressure. And that is going to come from doing one thing and one thing only, saying something publicly, which I know is going to receive backlash for it. And so I talked to my family, my husband and my kids, and I just said, I'm considering this. Will you just pray about it and prayerfully consider if this is something I should do? Because obviously you're going to see something from me that you've never seen. They all were like, Mom, I totally think you should do it. I mean, it's you've been an athlete your whole life. I know that you wouldn't be happy to be competing against a boy, and you have a platform that you'll be able to get some people to listen to you. And so I was like, okay. And then I told my couple of best friends, I just said, just want to give you a heads up. You're going to see something you've never seen from me before. So just beware. And then I jumped in. I mean, I not only jumped in the space and started posting, I reached out to XXXY Athletics, who at the time was brand new. They were only like 4 months old as an athletic company. And I said, I'd love to be an ambassador with you. And so that's where I just was like, everything changed. I took down my little tagline and then I was like, save women's sports, and just started, just really saw that I wasn't supposed to be a leader in the space, but I was supposed to be a cheerleader and supporter for these young girls. They needed more people to stand around them as scaffolding while they were being expected to do something terrifying. And, especially like I think of the 2 girls in Washington State that I've become very close with are in my upcoming book. One was 14 at the time and the other was 15 at the time. And the 14-year-old was in the Junior Olympics in Kashmir, and she was slated to be the winner of the 1600. And she, things were going well. And then all of a sudden, it was like this unknown player just smoked her. I mean, smoked her. And she was like, I don't understand. Where did she come from? And it wasn't until she was standing on the podium, of course, disappointed because she just lost, that then the people are like snickering out in the crowd and whispering and everything, that she found out that it was a boy who beat her. And she's like this really like terrified about speech class. I mean, she's 15. I mean, come on. Let's any girl, put yourself as a 15-year-old. I don't care how bold of an individual you are. Just go back to being 15 and trying to fit into the world around you. Let alone just now having this thing that was just so deeply unfair. And she actually had 4 trans athletes over the next like 6 months that she had to compete against and lose to. And so watching her, and I just was like, these girls, they need more adults in the room that just say, I'm there with you. I haven't been wronged in that same way. I don't have a daughter that I watched being wronged, but I can absolutely put myself back in being a 11-year-old swimmer at Juanita High School. That's where the pool was. That's where I ended up going to high school eventually. But being a swimmer there, and imagine being in that bathroom, which was, you went through this little teeny like concrete walkway. You turned like 2 feet this way, and you were in one of those big cavernous showers that had the 2 metal poles, and then the shower heads that went around. I mean, no privacy whatsoever. And I mean, the visceral reaction that I can have thinking about what it was like. My sister recalls a man actually coming in when she was 12. She was a competitive swimmer too, and slowly walking through while all the girls were in there, and like then eventually walking out the other side. As a 52-year-old woman, recounting that story to me is so visceral for her. And I'm like, it's not hard for me to imagine being there and having an 18-year-old boy being in a space where, 12, 13, 14-year-old girls, let alone, of that. I mean, that's certainly the worst part about it. But competing against them, I was the top athlete at Juanita High School. I was voted most athletic. I knew how to make myself a better athlete, play with the boys, but I also knew there was no way I could ever beat them, ever. And so trying to convince me that that's acceptable and okay it's just mind blowing. And so it's just been, it was just one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do what it is that I'm being asked to do, which is to just jump into the space and lend my voice and be a support and take the arrows, which of course came hard and fast.
Mhm.
And, some of them came very personally right at the beginning, which happens to everybody who goes into that space.
Yeah.
But then it just becomes white noise trolls online, and you just kind of deal with it. I mean, I don't deal with it like, some people do, but I just felt that it was important because Title IX was 52 years ago,
Yeah.
and you and I got to benefit from
Yes.
Title IX
Yes.
and all the sports I got to play from the time I was
Yes.
6 years old, and to imagine that being taken away from future generations, it's just like not
Well,
on my watch.
and the thing is, like, look, everyone's entitled to have their own opinion,
Of course.
but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Right.
And there are facts.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Biological men are completely different than biological
Right.
women.
We know this.
The
Everybody knows this.
muscle
Yeah.
composition is completely different
Right.
on a male
Right.
than it is on a female. A female could work out until they're blue in the face, and a man could never work out a day in his life, and there will still be a different
Yep.
body composition.
Right.
Where I come from on it is, having grown up as a competitive figure skater who, starting at the age of 5, used to get up at 3:30 in the morning and drive an hour to the ice rink and be on the ice rink at 5 a.m. in the morning for 16 years of my life.
Yeah. Wow.
My parents sacrificed
Yeah.
with time and money because they believed in letting me believe in my dream.
Right. Sure.
I worked my tail off, and I was one of that. I didn't even realize it at the time. One of the most fortunate women ever, because my hard work paid off. And I got to see the top US podium twice with a silver and a bronze medal. Not all skaters in my, in my sport for 16 years that got up at 3:30 in the morning and skated at 5 got that kind of a payoff.
Right.
I did.
Yeah.
But had I ever had to go head to head with any male,
Yeah.
I would have never seen the podium.
Right.
Like, I look at it today. I still follow skating. It's my passion. I love to watch it. As amazing as these female skaters are, and I love them. Alyssa Liu is incredible.
Yeah.
Amber Glenn's incredible. I mean, Isabel, she's incredible. I'm proud of every one of them. But none of them would beat the top 10 men in the world. They don't have the ability to do the jumps, the strength it takes to do those jumps, and the strength to compete head to head. It's just not meant to be that way due to biological things. It's nothing personal at all.
No. Right. You do you.
I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
other people that are on a much higher pay grade need to
Right.
figure that out.
Right.
But if I had a young girl, I would be absolutely freaking out. I
Right.
mean, it's to think of these young women putting all this time and energy, not to mention their mental state, spending their lives training.
Right.
Spending their
Right.
lives for a dream they had, like a dream I had. I was laser focused on that ice skating dream. It's all I wanted. I wanted to be a top US figure skater. And I worked my rear end for it. I couldn't imagine getting to the pinnacle, skating in that national, or high level competition, and then getting aced out because a male skater was in
Because
it.
somebody who wasn't better than you.
Yes.
They just had biology that allowed them to beat you.
There's a reason why in wrestling they separate weight classes.
Oh, yeah, totally.
There's a reason why in boxing.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do they
Yeah.
separate it out in
Yeah,
boxing
right.
and MMA?
Right, totally.
Because
Yeah.
the big guys are gonna knock the
Right,
living,
exactly. I
what?
know.
out of the smaller
That's
ones.
why the Paris Olympics was such a joke. Just everything that went,
Yes.
and so thank God
It's
for,
common
for
sense.
the IOC. That I mean, for the Olympic Committee to finally
Yes.
rule on that.
Yeah.
That was so huge because that being the pinnacle of athletics,
Mhm.
now it's filtering it down.
Mhm.
And, I'm amazed.
Are you seeing positive changes?
Absolutely, absolutely. So
Okay.
many different organizations have already made the changes. Who was the one
Yeah.
that I was most, is it fencing? Fencing has a
Oh,
lot of trans athletes
yes.
that compete in the women's category.
Yeah.
But actually, I mean, even Miss America. So one of the women represented in my book was she was Miss North Florida. So she was on her
Mhm.
way, and they wanted her to sign a new contract that basically said that sex is how you identify. And she's like, "This, no, it's a women's pageant. It's," and she said no, and so they took her crown and kicked her out. And they just now Florida's said, we're gonna sue all of Miss America and everything. And they literally changed it in their dialogue in their contracts to say that you have to be biologically female
Mhm.
because it's a women's it's a women's
Yeah. Yeah.
category. And so the thing is, it's like there's certain things that people are like, well, does it really matter that much? And it's like, it's also the principle of the thing. It's like if one is given over, then you start to create a lot of gray area. And, some of the women that are represented in my book are like lifelong Democrats. I mean, I would say, much more of a conservative, more of a Republican view. You would have like 99% of them are going to say men should not be in women's sports.
Mhm.
Whereas it's a lot more difficult on the Democratic side because there's a lot more liberal thought processes and a lot more gray. So it's been harder for like people like Martina Navratilova is a perfect example of
Mhm.
somebody who is, very liberal in her beliefs, but is absolutely 100% hardline on this and has
Yeah.
gotten so much backlash because of it. And Nancy Hogshead, who's she's a former Olympic swimmer, I think 3-time gold medalist. She was the first player at her university, which I think was Duke, to receive a women's scholarship because of Title IX.
Yeah.
And when she came out of college, she ended up becoming an attorney and working on the protection of women's sports and sex-based rights. So things having to do with like, rape crisis centers and, bathrooms and things that have official discrimination for a reason, right?
Mhm.
Because it puts women into compromising positions.
Yeah.
And so just hearing her talk about how it's been very tough because she lost a lot of friends when she spoke publicly about something that, 10 years ago was
Yeah.
not a problem to say and now became a problem to say. And so it's been very interesting watching how things are slowly but definitely going in the right direction. And that's just because people have given more voice to it. More of these girls had come out. I work with Icons, which Icons is uh, an organization is started by a former Olympic swimmer and then a mom of a daughter who was affected by the Leah Thomas who
Mhm.
raced against Riley.
Mhm.
And so the two of them ended up starting a company, a nonprofit, and really it's an aggregate of all these stories and resources. And so when they would find out about something, they would contact the girl and they would, talk. Even if she wasn't willing to go public, they would at least just get her story so they could kind of put it in a database. And then,
Yeah.
and then eventually over time, some of these girls would say, "Yeah, I'm ready for you to use my name publicly." And then, being able to see this, kind of amping up. And so it's really remarkable how many in all different arenas and sports and all across the globe that are coming forward because courage is contagious. You see somebody who's willing to
Yes.
do it. And with the 40 women that I interviewed specifically for this book, she handled it adversity, stories of courage, the faith and the
Mhm.
power of one moment is the working title. But they are all women who've spoken out publicly for the protection of women in sports or spaces. I do have a couple of women like, do you know who Tish Hyman is?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
she's running for LA mayor right now.
Okay.
And
Okay.
she was a woman who went viral for a video where she actually had this verbal altercation with a trans person who was in the women's bathroom when she was in there nude and he said some very vulgar things towards her. Sorry, I don't use preferred pronouns. It was a man in the women's bathroom.
Mhm.
And not saying I wouldn't with somebody face to face. But for the sake of story,
Sure.
people get lost.
No,
If you do
totally
the other way.
agree.
So she went viral because she had actually, in a 2-week time period, never run into a man in the women's bathroom. And she's a Black lesbian, which, in the
I
hierarchy
do
of
remember that.
ideologies
Yes.
and stuff like that.
This one got national news.
Oh, it did. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely it
Yes.
did.
This is why
Yeah.
the name sounds familiar. Okay.
Yeah, and she just she's an amazing. I've got to meet her and interview her, and just she's been on Megyn Kelly, and she's just awesome. But she just was not having it. I mean, she had over a 2-week time period, she had 3 different men in 2 different gyms, interacting in her space when she was, in the
Wow.
locker room getting changed and naked and all this kind of stuff. And so we have had these spaces that have been protected, and we haven't had to consider that. And I mean, I had a Starbucks thing where there was a guy in there. I was just like, what is going on? I mean, I just did the internal fear
Mm-hmm.
that women have,
Mm-hmm.
the gift of fear,
Mm-hmm.
the intuition. I was just
Mm-hmm.
talking to somebody about it today. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason why women's intuition is so high, is
Yeah.
because it's what keeps us safe.
Yes.
It's what allows us to keep our children safe.
Yes.
It's things that we can't identify and talk about, but we know inherently are not right.
Right.
And that is what is being challenged
Mm-hmm.
in so many spaces. And so, but these women are just, most of them are not like Tish Hyman. They're not going to have this big blowout that's going to go viral. And she was screaming and yelling, and there were expletives, and it was this big, huge thing. And she's just a very bold and outspoken personality. Most of these are quiet. I don't want to be in front of a camera. I certainly don't want to be doing public speaking type of
Mm-hmm.
girls who know something is so inherently wrong that they have overridden the fear that they have to stand in front of a podium,
Yeah.
and have been willing to get up there and just share publicly with Antifa threats, with having to have full-time security for a 16-year-old girl to
It's
have
crazy.
to walk into an event and have security. I spoke at an event with these 2 girls, one time 15, one was 16. They both had full-time security for the event. There were 20 police officers and cars there because we had Antifa threats, for them to just get up and tell their story of, this is what it was like when I was beat by a boy in sports, and I don't like it. And I don't think you should support that, or I think you should sign this
Mm-hmm.
initiative so we can all vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that is the courage that I want to capture in my book. It's understanding
Yeah.
what makes these girls and young women have the courage. Where does that come from? And then, more importantly, what advice do they have? What did they learn about themselves? How did they become better people because of it? Not because they,
Mm-hmm.
want to, wave a victim flag. That is not what
Right.
any of these women are
No.
doing. They're just saying, this is unfair, and I'm willing to say it publicly and face all of the incoming that comes along with it at that
Mm-hmm.
age, social media. Oh my gosh. And I just
Yeah.
was so encouraged by that God just said, this is the book I need you to write, to showcase these stories. So it's proof that this was a time period we lived in.
Yep.
These are real stories, real people that have experienced it,
Mm-hmm.
that we can look back on and go, that was weird, and then this was, something, historical content, but also then something that still, in the end, is encouraging and inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, again, about victimization. It's not even really about the other athlete. Most of the time, I don't even
Yeah.
mention who they are. An occasional story. I mean, like Riley Gaines, you kind of have to know.
It's very high
'cause
profile.
it's been
Yeah.
part of it. But most of the time, they're not mentioned. It's just what brought them to have the courage to get up on a podium and then step off and turn their back. Like, what was that like to be 14 or 15 to make that decision and not know what might happen
Right.
afterwards, what you might lose as it relates to college, friends that you might lose, what might happen to you online, what people might say to you. And I just want to know what makes those girls tick and why. And the truth of the matter is, of all of, let's see, I've got 37, 32 of them are Christian. And I knew that was a component because I was seeing it over and over and over again, that they were very bold in their faith.
They felt called to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that they knew that God created
Mm-hmm.
male and female, that there was this truth that they were willing to stand on, that God knit us together, as it says in Psalms, inside our mother's womb, and and just the intricately designed us to be the way that we're supposed to be, beautifully amazing, awesome, both sexes, the world could not run without them, but they're different. They're uniquely and beautifully different. And we can't erase that after
Yeah.
50 years of acknowledging it
Yes.
by creating Title IX.
I can't wait. This book is going to be amazing.
I'm looking forward to it.
You and I talked about it offline,
Yeah.
and I think it's incredible to hear these stories. And, you know, I mean, I just like having been at the top of my own sport, the heartbreak I feel for some of these women, these stories I've heard, I just can't imagine having put in all that time, effort, blood, sweat,
Yeah.
tears, injuries to get to the pinnacle and then not be able to be
Right.
awarded your crown
Right.
because someone that has an unfair advantage. That's my whole point in it.
Yeah.
It's nothing personal. It's just an unfair advantage.
And they're
I mean, there's
playing within
do
the rules
they
that
don't
have
let
been
women in the
allowed.
NFL?
Yeah.
What?
Right.
Why don't they let women
Right.
go? Do
Right.
you think that NFL players want to go and
Yeah.
play against women?
Yeah.
No.
Well, and look, it doesn't happen in the reverse.
It
That's the
doesn't
thing.
happen.
Women
No,
don't
that's
go,
the thing.
Oh, I'm going to go now.
That's the thing.
Go play in men's
Women
sports." No,
don't
you're
go
not.
in men's sports.
They don't.
Why
Yeah,
is that?
I'll just say I'm
Yeah.
non-binary, but I'm going to still compete in the women's category.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
we know it's not
Yeah.
fair. It's just not fair.
It's not
Yeah.
fair
But they have been-
biologically.
the stories. I'm so. When the first one, I wrote Peyton McNabb. Do you know who Peyton McNabb
I
is?
know that
So,
name
yeah,
as
she's
well.
the one who got
Yeah.
the injury, had
Yes.
concussion, and
It was boxing,
no, she
right?
was volleyball.
volleyball.
Yeah,
Yes.
so she got hit in the head, was out cold for more than 30 seconds.
Oh.
It suffered brain damage, completely ruined her senior year. She didn't, her sports and going back into sports was completely changed.
Mhm.
And so it was, I mean, life altering. It was very life altering for her. And yet, who she still became in the process is when I read it, I cried. And then I was like, I mean, as an author, especially when you're in a draft form, you don't want anybody to read your draft form stuff. But I was so moved by her story because it's her words, but it's in me crafting in a way that's, it's like the hero's journey, and it just goes through this heartbreak and then a little backstory, and and then we get to the awful, and then it's like rising from the ashes. It's like, and so it's so good. And so I was like, I sent it to my husband, and I'm like, you've got to read it tomorrow morning. And he sends me a picture of a towel. He's working out in the gym. He goes, these are supposed to be for sweat, not for tears. And he just said, I was literally crying. I mean, like tearing up the whole way through. And then I was like, I need to send it to one other person. So I sent it to a person who's managing my social media, who also happens to be in the book as well.
Mhm.
And she's same thing. It was like tears, tears, tears. And it was just so good. And
Yeah.
this is what I want these stories to be captured, and I want to bring honor to these
Mhm.
young women who have done something that has been asked of them that
Yeah.
most people have been unwilling to do,
Mhm.
and yet they did. And the lives that have been created on the other side of it. I mean, Riley Gaines, of course, is
Yeah.
like
She's the
like
most
before
notable.
and after. But I mean, you look at her life and what it's turned into, and the amount of opportunities that she has, it's just unbelievable. But she's taken a lot of responsibility for that, and
Mhm.
she was also a very grounded person, an amazing family, and things of that nature. But a lot of these women, the opportunities that have opened up to them and the connections they have, and that's a lot of what taking risk is you play it safe. You're
Yeah.
going to have a small life. If you're willing to take big risks, yeah, you have big failure out there. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
You're not going to maybe fail. You're going to fail. You might as well do it as quickly, as fast as humanly possible, because
Yeah.
all of success is built off of many failures. And
Yeah.
it's so incredible looking at their lives and what they have become because of facing adversity and choosing to walk through that door, the moment, which these are like really before and after moments, because it's usually the moment you hit
Mhm.
post that your life you can't ever get the genie back in the bottle, because then now once it's out in the World Wide Web, you become targets for just about anything and everything. And so
Well,
there is a before and after.
real growth happens through risk.
Oh, totally.
You don't get the real growth unless you're willing to risk it.
And
that's-
resistance. I mean, that being an athlete, you're not going to become a great athlete by having it soft and easy. You're going to get it through sheer resistance and perseverance and endurance and suffering
And going
and
after
all
it.
and just
Yeah.
continuing to get back up and try
Yep.
again and try again. And,
You
eventually
only
think of something.
regret what you don't do.
Yeah.
You don't regret what you do.
Yeah.
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 And at some point in your life, regret is heavier than risk.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Totally.
When you have to look back and go, wow, I regret that I didn't go for it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Exactly.
it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you were able to you played a huge role in getting these initiatives
Yeah.
that are
That
going to
was
be on the
awesome.
ballot in
Yeah.
November.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was incredible. And wow, you got some headwinds on that too.
Yep. It just like
Yeah.
everything else, you get a lot of resistance, but
Mm-hmm.
Washington State came through. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the fourth highest, or no, the seventh highest amount of signatures on any initiative
Mm-hmm.
ever in the state of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
We had 414,000 who signed to get it on the ballot. So this November we can vote for the protection of women in sports.
Mm-hmm.
And that is massive considering less than 50% of it was Republicans. So it just goes to show you this is not
Yes.
this is a bipartisan issue. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It really is something that most people agree on.
It's common sense.
Yeah. It's just that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
other things that we have a lot of divides on, but this one really is one of those things like, I think I kind of knew that about the age of 6, that there was a difference between boys and girls.
Yeah. Well, I'm thrilled that you got it on this ballot
Yeah.
coming up, because I think that once it goes out to the people,
Yeah.
it's got a really great shot of passing.
Oh, totally.
And it's just nice that it's not just going to be handled at the legislature level, because that's very lopsided.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really
Yeah.
interesting
And
to
that's what's-
see how.
The part
Yeah.
that is just that is so it frustrated me, and it was like the passion that burned right towards the
Mhm.
end. It was like the two people who were out there and promoting it and speaking it, besides Brandy Cruz. She was definitely spearheading a lot with Let's Go
Yes.
Washington. But it was these two girls that aren't even old enough to vote themselves. Two 16-year-olds standing up there telling their stories,
Yeah.
having Antifa threaten them, getting stuff yelled at them, and just all this just junk. It's just like ridiculousness. And I'm like, if that doesn't motivate you to
Yes.
get wherever you need to get to
Yes.
sign it, because these poor girls, we can't put them through another year of this,
Mhm.
of having to try and do it again a year from now and get it on the ballot. And I was so thrilled. We needed like 380, or I think really it was like in the low 300s that we really, really needed. And it was just the state of Washington totally came through, even though we dealt with people like threatening signature gatherers outside of grocery stores and saying things to them and assaulting them and taking the signed pages and ripping them up. And it's just like, really, for that, for women's sports, this is that you have to deal with this? And people are like, I don't want to do this, I'm too afraid. And so like my church is like, we're gonna have a place to sign inside the church. Come to the church, you can sign in there. There's police officers. I can't believe I'm even needing to say that,
Mhm.
but come and sign it. And
Yeah.
a lot of people did. Yeah, and they showed up. I'm really proud, very proud, of the state of Washington. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah.
So the funny thing is, before I started writing the women in sports book,
Yeah.
I actually was signed up for a book writing course, because I was going to start on my big book. That's going to be my next keynote. That's what I'm going to be traveling and talking on, and I'm
Wow.
so looking forward to it. And the working title right now is Striving Joyfully.
Oh,
And
okay.
really what it is it's a compilation of all the things that I've learned through business and just these seasons of life,
Mhm.
but it's also what I learned in the last 6 years of doing endurance sports, because
Okay.
endurance sports were different than my former career. Everything else was very short, like 100, 200 running, swimming, volleyball, start, stop, all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, but doing things for a very long, extended period of time. And so when I did my first endurance race, which was in 22, it was actually on my 47th birthday. And it was hiking the height of Mount Everest in less than 36 hours. So it's called 29029. So you hike up
Mhm.
and then you ride the gondola down. And so it took me about 32 hours. No sleeping or anything like that. And I learned a lesson that I really struggled most of my life to learn. And that is to be present where your feet are planted,
Mhm.
even in the midst of the suffering, even when it's hard and you don't think you're going to be able to get through it. You just keep moving forward and you have to find the little bits of joy in the midst of it. And so as I started thinking about this next book, I
Love
really
that.
started to distill down what are the areas that I have struggled with the most and where am I now? What have I learned from understanding how an endurance athlete trains to help me overcome and find joy daily as I'm grinding towards a very big goal, because I'm
Mm.
always reaching towards goal. And I love that about achievers and goal oriented people or trying to, become better at something or lots of things. And then they've got a lot of things going on, right? And I've actually found two things, and we've already touched on one, but the two most vital, important things to be able to be joyful in the midst of
Mhm.
striving
Mhm.
is gratitude,
Yep.
which there's a lot of study, of course, on that.
Mhm.
And the other is margin and rest. That is the hardest thing for most people to work into their schedule, yet it is what hinges everything else. If you are exhausted, you are not going to be a good parent. If you are exhausted, you are not going to be an effective business communicator. If you are exhausted, you are going to be a less version of whoever you are
Uh-huh.
called to be.
Uh,
And most of us are not good at prioritizing the non negotiable part of what rest is.
Yep.
And that means micro breaks. That means finding the little moments where you actually have them scheduled, where you can get 20 minutes by yourself, even if that's sitting in the closet away for the one place the kids can't find you, whatever it is, meditating, prayer, just closing your eyes and having a power nap and making it truly part of your routine, not something you just add in when it's convenient. And I did that for so many
Mhm.
years. That's what landed me in the ER. But when I
Yes.
started training, and more importantly, when I started doing these events that would go 30 hours nonstop, you realize if you do not rest when you need to, and I'm not saying taking a 2 hour nap, I'm just saying sit for 10 minutes, have something to eat, refresh your mind, maybe close your eyes for a second, look at something else, and just get yourself out of the world of just focus on that one thing. That's where you just reset all the systems just a little bit, and then you keep moving forward. And we get so focused on the end goal, and the end goal is so fleeting and it's so small. And yet, most of life happens in the long journey leading up to it,
Mhm.
and we miss it because we are too tired
Mm.
to really enjoy feeling our way through it and being
Mhm.
able to pour out, like you said, the
Yeah.
gratitude.
Yeah.
How can you pour out of an empty vessel?
Can't.
And yet,
Yep.
achievers, especially if you're parents, you're
Mhm.
so good at giving to everybody else.
Mhm.
And so, those are the two things that it's like, it's not, we don't need more goal setting. I think there's plenty of goal setting books. I mean, I'm all about goal setting. I still do it daily.
Yeah.
But that can't be the first thing
No.
because
Uh-uh.
it doesn't matter how great your goals
Yeah.
are. My
Yeah.
goals drove me into the ground
Yeah.
and nearly killed me.
Mhm.
And I nearly imploded my marriage, my
Mhm.
family, my
Mhm.
business, all
Mhm.
because I was sure if I just pushed hard enough, I would eventually get there. No, the body eventually says I cannot do it.
No.
And
Yeah.
and so it was really understanding that those things are non-negotiable, but that they have to be worked in, not just a vacation that comes up for every once in a while, or not just working your way to thank God I'll eventually make it to Sunday and be able to rest. It's like, where is a small component of my day to day that I can actually carve out for a little bit of rest
Yes.
and recharge, even if
Yeah.
that's just a meditation or just journaling. But honestly, a power nap is one of the most amazing pieces of life that I have worked into my, even when I was at my office, shut my door, set my timer for 22 minutes, 22 to 27 minutes, never more than 27 minutes. And then it's just like everything shuts down and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like a new person.
Yes.
Yeah, I can go and I can deal
Yeah.
with these things now.
Yeah.
And so that, and then I think the final component then is the morning routine, which that's something that I integrated years ago, especially when my kids were younger. I really felt that God just kind of was like, "Yeah, you're waking up tired all the time." And I'm like, "I never have any, time," and complaining. I'm all stressed out. And He's like, yeah, you need to wake up an hour early. And I'm like, that has a 5 on it. I'm not big on waking up an hour early with a 5 on it. But it was because my kids, it was like I was waking up with my kids,
Yeah.
and then everybody else's needs were dictating my own. And so I worked in an hour, getting up an hour early, and here I am now. I'm basically an empty nester. I still love that time. I'm like,
Yes.
I wake up. I don't have to get up to an alarm. I haven't woken up to an alarm in years, but um, and my body wakes up between 4:45 and 5:30, somewhere in there, and I love it because I get my time with God, which is getting me spiritually set.
Mhm.
I have my 3 most important intentions for the day, which that's in my and I have a 90-day journal that's also
Mhm.
my daily planner.
Mhm.
So my 3 most so time with God. What am I grateful for? What are my 3 biggest priorities of the day? And then putting in those components that are, appointments that are already scheduled. And then where in there am I going to get some rest time? Is that going
Mhm.
to be a nap? Is it going to be, something that might be a little bit shorter, a little power nap or whatever it is? And then having some of that time and then exercising. Those 3 things, time with God is setting my intention and then getting my body moving before anybody else could steal my
Yes.
time from me.
Yes.
Now I am like full head to toe ready
Yeah.
to now enter in and let other things start to kind of maneuver my day a little bit. And that's been just so eye-opening, especially as I've done endurance sports um that I really struggled with the rest piece. Is I thought I had to earn it. I thought I had to earn a massage. I thought I had to earn a nap. I thought I had to earn, and all it did is I just would get sick. That was my earned rest, because finally I'd be like, nope, you're just sick now
The
because you
body
won't
is
stop.
the most amazing
It
machine
is.
ever built. And what we put it through, like if we go through our life and think about what we've put it through, but it keeps going,
Yeah.
it keeps pumping, it keeps going until it doesn't.
Right.
And I mean, I had a similar thing come up, 3.5 years ago, my own epiphany that changed my life and my course on, you know, exercise and getting back in shape and all that kind of stuff. But when you get a wake up call and you realize that putting yourself first, like choosing yourself, I call it choosing you,
Yeah.
is a non negotiable.
Right.
And my big thing is 1 hour every day for myself. It's the first appointment in the calendar. It's a non negotiable. There's no more appointment. There's no appointment in my calendar that's more
Yeah.
important than my 1 hour
Right.
with myself. And I can choose what that is. Normally, it's exercise, but the time might change. Sure, you can shift it around, but I never don't. And
Yeah.
you know what? Ever since I started doing that, my body has loved me.
Yeah.
And it's continued to like just, you know, go at a rate that, it's like, okay, fine. You filled me up. I'm good. Keep rolling.
Right.
But that's the piece so many people don't understand. It's the health is wealth.
Right. That's the
N-
saying. The people will
Yes.
spend their health trying to gain wealth.
Yes.
And then they'll try to spend their wealth
Wealth.
to regain their health. And by then, it's often too late.
Yes.
And it's like, if I
Yes.
could drill that
Yes.
into 20 and 30-year-olds,
Yes.
take care of it.
Yes.
People ask me, it's like, I can't believe you're 50. And it's like, but I never stopped caring for it.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to maintain something. I've gone through my
Yes.
phases, of course I have,
Sure.
but where I've worked out a lot and then I haven't worked out that much and I had too much going on and all that kind of stuff. But I know what it's like to be just physically exhausted all the time and not be able to get the best of
Mhm.
me, and just the
Mhm.
levels of stress and cortisol, and how stress is like the killer. I mean, that
Totally.
is like the
Yep.
thing that
Cortisol.
is
Yeah.
right, that is killing people, that is causing all these other things. And so again, that's what it just comes back to, this ability to build some margin in so we can have some rest, because when we try and pack too much in, that's when we get stressed out, and then we
Yeah.
don't get it done, and then we're upset, and then we're angry at people, and
Yeah.
it spirals out to something. But once your health is gone, they say, what do they say also, that
Yeah.
when you're healthy you have 1,000 dreams, when you're sick you have one.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, what did you
Yeah.
do all this for? You worked all these years. You stockpiled a bunch of this money. Now you have the time to do it and you don't have your health.
Yeah.
Like literally health is the only thing that nothing else matters if you don't have your health.
Yeah.
You
Working in
can't.
retirement, we saw that.
Yeah,
I would see
you
people
probably
walk
saw
out
it
of
a
the
lot.
office and I'm like, this is so sad. You just gave
So
all
sad.
the best of your life to a company. And
Yeah.
then, 2-3 years later, they've passed away
Yeah.
because of health. And I'm like, was that what it was all for? I don't think
Yeah.
you would have chosen that.
No.
And it's sad. And so
It
maybe that's a
is.
gift that I was given as I saw many people going through that.
I've seen it too.
Yeah.
I've seen it too. And I'm thankful now that I had my what I call 2x4 moment, where I felt like a 2x4. I was hit with a 2x4. And I'm grateful for it because it really knocked me. It really knocked the sense into me where I realized like, wow, I got to make some major changes here.
Yeah.
And but that's the thing is you make a choice. These are the pivotal times, like the 50s. It seems to be the age where it hits. That's the time where you either see people go this way or they go that way.
Yeah.
And you can make a conscious decision of what the next 20 is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
one of the most important
one thing
decisions.
that I would say is we were talking about Joe Rogan earlier before we got on there. As he always talks about, just doing really hard things, like putting yourself through suffering.
Yes.
And that is one of the things that when I did my first endurance event, that's where I realized it was manufactured crisis, because the night before the event, I had never felt so alive. I mean, because I was terrified. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know if I would be able to do it. It was just like everything was on this heightened sense of alertness and aliveness. And I was just like, everything's firing. And you get through it and you realize I just put my body through like a simulated crisis.
Yeah.
But I got to choose to do it and then still learn the lessons.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of times we get to the point like what happened to me when I was in the ER and then, nearly sold my company. That wasn't simulated. That was literally a crisis that, the 2x4, that was my 2x4 moment. It was just like everything, and to Randy, 2x4 in his head too.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things. So that's the beauty of exercise, or even if it's like a 5K and you've never considered doing it, and it gives you butterflies and it makes you nervous and you have to train and do some things for it. That's what I've been so fascinated with 29 on 29 specifically, this climbing, because the people that do it are not all, and they're not all athletes like me. I mean, I was, all grown athlete just like you, but they've somebody like who's never even done a 5K, and they commit to doing a 20-week training program, and then they commit to just not quitting and continuing to take steps. And I've seen people be on the mountain for 36 hours, not sleep, that you would look at and go, there's no way that person did that. And you're like, yeah. And you know what? And you look at this burly person over there that, looks real fit and everything. And they crashed out halfway through. And it was just because somebody did the work. They trained their body to understand what was going on. And then they just had this willingness to see it through. And then who they become on the other side of that is such a gift to them.
Yes.
And we all have that choice. We can choose to do hard things that make us better, has been kind of the through line, or we can just choose to be comfortable and live a small life, or we can live this big, full, rich life, and we can choose the things that we want to put into it. But that means we also have to choose to pull certain things out that are not serving us well. And that can be hard.
Exactly. My father passed away 3.5 years ago, and he was my absolute North Star, like strongest man I've ever known in my entire life. I was just like him, absolutely adored him. And on the last conversation we had, I still remember every word of it. It probably one of the most, he was teaching up until literally the moment he passed away. And he still, gave his 50-year-old daughter very sage advice on his way out. And I remember the number one thing he said is he goes, and this is a man who was incredibly weak at that point, just held my hand and squeezed it as tight as he could and said, go live your life. Live. Don't walk through it like a zombie, like most people do. Most people, he's like, just, a lot of people just walk through it. He's like, don't be afraid. Live it. Go for it. And that's always stayed with me. It's always stayed with me because I think fear just it paralyzes people.
Yeah.
Just the fear of oh my gosh, what if this happens? And it's interesting, like ever since he said that to me, and I went through my own 2x4 moment, like there's very little I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I've faced a lot of those fears. There's very little I'm actually afraid of.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's going to be okay.
Right. Right.
And what's interesting is our bodies are capable of so much more. We can go so much further beyond what our mind
Totally.
tells us. I'm a huge fan of Jesse Itzler.
Mm-hmm.
Do you follow Jesse Itzler?
He actually, the endurance race that
Yeah,
I have.
it's a big
he's
one.
No, he's one of the owners. He's one of the three owners of it. So,
well,
yeah.
and a gal that I work with has done that race, met him, and coached with him.
Yeah.
But his book, Living with the Seal,
Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah,
one of my
I've read it.
most favorites.
I've read it.
And it just shows you that you're like, this guy's crazy. This
Yeah.
guy's absolutely
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
How are you doing this?
Yeah.
But you can do it. And it just goes to the whole live your life.
Yeah.
Like just live it.
Right. Right.
Go for
Yep.
it.
Yep. And be present where your feet
Be
are planted. That's the
present
thing.
where your feet
like
are planted.
you said,
I
they're
love
zombies. So it's like still, you got to, I mean, even
that.
when
Yeah.
you're in the hard moments, just what can you do to still look around and take in where you are? Because
Yeah.
tomorrow is not promised for
It's not.
any of us.
It's not given.
I mean, the longer you live, the more you recognize that, of course. But you know, that is just something that you really do have to just believe that this is the only day I've been promised. So I better have a nice conversation with Carice, you know, because this could be it. You know,
It could be
I
it.
might not be making
This
it
might
home.
be
I
the
hope to
swan
God that's
song.
not the case.
Yes.
But you know, at least we would be ending on a high note. You know what I'm saying? So I love that. That's great advice from your dad. What a good man.
And I
Fortunate.
thought, wow, I've looked back on it. You know, I mean, there's a few other things he shared too, but that one was the number one thing. And it's the one that I literally think about every day. Live, go live.
Yeah.
Don't walk through life, live. And it's so true. It's so true because we don't know.
Yep.
That's the, what do they say? The biggest mistake most people make is they think they have time,
Yeah.
and we don't.
Right.
It's the thing.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
the
The reason why it mattered so much coming from your dad is because he didn't have any time left.
No.
And that's why it holds so much weight.
The 5 things he told me, like they're etched in my brain for the rest of my life. Like it's like he gave me the best for last, and it was his last gift and lesson to his 50-year-old daughter as I was going on in my life.
Wow.
And
What
yeah,
a fortunate relationship you had.
Incredible.
To have a dad like that.
incredible.
I know a lot of people would
Yeah.
love to have. A
And
dad like
here's
that.
he
So
was
view that way.
on his way out, but he wanted to pass on
Yeah.
those little keys. It was such a gift, and I'll never forget it. I've never forgotten it.
What was his name?
Kip.
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 Sounds like a fun guy.
Yep. Everyone loved him. Everybody
I
loved
bet.
him.
You can't have a name. Kip was such an ass. No, you know what I'm saying? You couldn't have that name and be that.
You couldn't. And he used to wear
You have to be a fun guy.
Christmas suspenders and socks,
Of
even
course
in
he
July.
did.
Yeah, even in July. Yep.
Oh,
He loved it.
that's so awesome.
That was his personality. So
Oh, Dad.
yeah.
So sweet. So sweet.
Yeah.
But what a joy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
That was awesome. We talked about some awesome stuff.
We did.
Yeah.
We absolutely did. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Arwen, thank you so much for coming on today. Like we talked about some absolute gems. Like there are some great takeaways for people. And thank you for sharing your story. And I cannot wait till your book comes out. When it does, I'll make sure and post the link
Love it.
so people can buy it. It's going to be an unbelievable book. So I can't even tell you how much I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And to my viewers, as always, please reach out with any kind of questions at all. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.